Hey, here we are. It's lunchtime today. It's another 2 a-day for us, guys. Punch those time cards. Pete, Mac, make sure that you get those turned in so we can get our weekly paycheck here. All right.
Yep.
So today, topic number one, CrewCom Wireless with the field application notes, though, from our friends at CP Comms. You know, we've talked about so many different products. We've had the great fortune of hearing from each of the manufacturers and their notes around their products. And we've really tried hard to be able to show field applications where it's folks like Brian and Kevin who are in the field using these products and in some ways sharing that unvarnished truth. It's anytime we share those kind of things, it's never a slam on the manufacturer. It's always about the reality of using hardware in the field, right? And I think these kind of stories we're going to hear today about how CrewCom was put to use. Some of the we're going to see a lot of the software, and more importantly, though, we're going to get some good guidelines on from that. I don't expect them to tell us how to deploy it, but I do think I'll be able to make some good notes around watching how you did what you did for the times when I'm using CrewCom in the field. So Pete, Mac, good to see you guys again. Mac's already been to work this morning and he's already home, and his goatee's still in pretty good shape even after being behind the mask.
Right.
But let's talk just through our usual Q&A, and will the webinar be available later? And all those questions that come in, and then Pete's going to kind of lead us into this topic because he has some firsthand experience, if you will. So take it away, guys.
Well, I think pretty much everybody here knows the drill. That's certainly a lot of familiar names on that attendee list. But for those of you who haven't been here 35 times before, there's a question tab in your GoToWebinar control panel, and you can enter your questions in there and we will see them. And we will try to answer every question. Often we can't get to them all, but we try to get to every topic at least. And we have plenty of time to get to questions. It's we're here for 2 hours, so if you're here at the end, hopefully you'll get to all the questions. And with that, Pete, why don't you tell us about what we're going to be seeing here today?
Sure. This was a show I did. I was working for CP Communications, and it was a sporting event that was held at a private home out on Long Island. And the challenge for this was there was a lot of area to cover. Let me just show you a really, really fuzzy picture of the venue. Pardon this, it's the best I could get off of Google Maps. This was the venue here down in the right-hand side here, which was a sort of a cross-shaped venue. The length of this venue is about 300 feet. And most of our work was done in 3 rooms. There was a room here, room in the center, and room at that end. And so we had to have comms coverage in that area. This was in the sub-basement of the building. And then over in the upper level on the left end of the building was a garage that was turned into an announcer booth. So we had to have coverage there. The distance from this venue over to where the trucks are, which were way over here on the left-hand side, is about 600 feet. So we had 3 TV trucks and 2 trailers over here in this compound. And the venue was built about 4 or 5 years ago. And when they built it, they put in fiber all over the venue to cover it. But they imagined the TV trucks were going to be up in this field over here. So they put the fiber connection box over here. So we had to run fibers along the road, across the road, up the road, bang into here. So we had about 10 different bundles of fiber going to the fiber connection box across here. During load-in, a forklift dropped a container on the bundles of fiber on this road. They seemed to be okay, but later on during rehearsal, it turned out they weren't, and we had to scramble and find new fibers to connect across. So what we did is we were all located in the truck compound, and the venue only the actual athletes were performing down here, and we had stage managers in there, and then also way over here on the left, outside the view of the picture, was the green room. So we didn't cover all the way into the green room, but from the truck compound here, we used a Yagi antenna on one channel, one output of a transceiver, and aimed it south. And then over here in the announcers booth area, we put a Yagi antenna outside the room, shooting toward the truck compound, and another Yagi antenna and another transceiver shooting toward the venue. So we were able to cover this entire area without any dropouts whatsoever. Now I'm going to go away from this silly shared blurry thing and cut over to a picture of the actual setup Brian is going to be showing. Let me switch this over to Brian. If I can find you on this list here. Okay, Brian, you've got control. And Brian's sharing the CrewWare program that has the program, the layout we had. We had a couple of masters control units in here because we used slightly more than 18 bell packs. Each control unit manages 18 bell packs. So to do more than 18, we had to add a second control unit. Then we connected into a hub and fed antennas down to the venue over the fibers, and also we had antennas at the truck. In the truck compound, the antennas initially were located outside the trucks, but we found that everybody wanted to be inside the trucks. Wonder of wonders. But we didn't have enough antennas out there, so we just took the two antennas and remoted one of them over a short RG58 connector into inside the truck and put a 900 meg Sennheiser paddle on it inside. And technically, that's not the way the transceivers work. You really want to have both antennas in the space because they double send the data. But it worked pretty well in our case. In fact, one of the antennas, we ran into a passive splitter and split it between two trailers that were in the compound as well. So if I were to do this again, and this drawing actually has it programmed into it, the additional antennas, which I physically didn't have on site, so I couldn't have added them. It just was not, the venue was an hour and a half drive out of New York down in Long Island. So that's basically the layout we had at this venue, and what we're going to do now is go back and I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and we're going to do a basic programming of CrewWare starting from zero with just one master, one hub, one antenna, put a couple of bell packs on it and sync them up and program them. So Brian, why don't you go ahead and take it away. Your mic is muted.
Hey,
There you go.
can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, thanks, Peter. Yeah, like as Peter said, just we'll go through the CrewWare, we'll go through some of the the places you can get caught up on in terms of deployment and designing your initial system. Since Peter designed this system, there's been some updates, not only in firmware, but there's some additional hardware that's been deployed. Like now, in this system, you don't see a fiber hub. They now have a fiber hub, which is the inverse of the copper hub. So the copper is 7 ports and then a port that's either copper or fiber. The fiber hub is the inverse, where it's all fiber and then an RJ45 or copper input to it on the 8th port to connect it to your base stations. So some of the limitations of the system, maximum of 18 packs per base station, like Peter said. So if you need more than 18 packs, you have to go to an additional base station. You can do 36 packs on the system. You can do 14 transceivers on the system in the 900 meg. It's 16 in the 2.4 system. And then, you know, and we'll go through some of the stuff. If I close out Peter's system here, shut that down. And so when you open CrewWare, this is where you'd begin. You start with your basic system diagram. There's a couple different ways that you can begin your program. Either in this particular grid layout here, you can right click and you would add a device, and then you pick your device. This is one of the methods you could do it. Or on the left-hand side here, you see this device toolbox. You can pop that open, and then all the available devices are listed here. So they have the all toolbox, which will have every product that the folks at Pliant Technologies make. And then my toolbox, which you can categorize down into just the devices that maybe you own or just the ones that are available to you on that particular show. In this case, we don't have any of the 2.4 stuff with us, so we only have the 900 meg stuff, as well as we don't have any of the 2x2 control units or the 2x2 bell packs. In this scenario, we have the 4x4 control units. The difference being that there's 4 4-wires and 4 channels of 2-wire available to you for a total of 8. The 2x2 is just 2 2-wires and 2 channels of 4-wire. So, and then you have the copper hubs, the fiber hubs, and the radio transceivers. So initially, I like to start, we'll drag and drop in our control unit. As Peter said, we'll build a very basic system here. So we're just gonna have 1 control unit, and then maybe we'll just have 2 transceivers, very small system, you know, 1 area, maybe each transceiver can do 6 bell packs. So in this particular setup, you would have 4 channels of 4-wire, 4 channels of 2-wire available to you, as well as up to 12 bell packs in 1 zone or 1 area, or 6 bell packs in 2 zones, depending on how you connect this up. To connect, you'll see here the different ports. This is an RJ45 port, and then you have an RJ45 or fiber or SFP, excuse me. It comes with a dual strand SFP. A lot of times we replace them with single stranded SFPs just to keep our fiber counts down as the fiber guys are laying out the fiber plans. If they have limited strand count for whatever reason, we can just make it a single strand. So all we would do is if we want to make a connection, we would hold it down, drag over to our transceivers. So our transceivers have the option on the input side, either copper or fiber. So the secondary port that you'll see there, the RJ45 only, is a loop through. So it will not allow you to make this initial connection. So you go over to your input connection and it gives you a green, solid green connection. The green indicates that it's a type of copper. Okay, if we wanted to switch that, you would right click on it when you highlight it. And well, actually this particular connection I cannot redraw because I came off the copper port. It's on the base station. The base stations have 2 ports or have CrewNet. So you have the copper only, or then the copper or fiber for your connection. So if we wanted to make a fiber connection to our second antenna, we would drag it over here. This is copper only at the moment. Your default is copper. You'd right click on it, and now you have the option to select it as fiber. If you make it fiber, it turns it purple. So it's an easy indicator that you can distinguish between whether you have a copper connection or a fiber connection.
Brian, I think it's important to state that this network is not normal networking. This is a proprietary network. You can't put it into normal hubs or network devices.
Correct. That's very true. So the way the system works is there are no, the CU has 0 radios in it. There's no RF component to the CU or the control unit, what they call. Okay. Then you have the RT, which is the radio transceiver, and you have an RP, which I have here, which is a radio pack. Okay. So if you hear me use the shorthand, well, that's how Pliant distinguishes their products. So the CU itself has no RF component to it. So which makes it really great because now you can integrate 2 different types of systems. Currently it's available in 900 and it's available in 2.4. So you can integrate both 900 and 2.4 in through the same control unit, depending on making sure that you deploy the correct antennas, and then for the appropriate amount of bell packs or zones that you're choosing to use. So it passes, I said the CUs talk to the various devices, whether it be a hub or an RT via CrewNet. Like Peter said, CrewNet is not anything IT-wise that we can put into a normal switch or put into a normal application. It does have to go and talk to its own specific devices. So that's why it has a direct fiber connection path option to it. So you're not going through another switch or you're not going through another form of latency, because the bell packs the CU is extremely important upon timing, making sure that all of that information gets back to it in time.
Not shown here is the fact that the transceiver on fiber needs to have its own wall wart power.
Correct.
And that one wall port power can power several antennas that are then daisy chained out of that antenna.
Correct. You can do up to 7. The power supplies are 48 volts. They look very similar to an Aja power supply, so please don't plug them into an Aja. You will. That's only 5 volts. So yes, you can power up to 7 additional transceivers off of this. So if we wanted to add a transceiver and then connect it, we would go to our loop through port, which is here on the bottom, okay, and then go to our input port here, okay. So that would allow us to have now a fiber connection. This antenna is locally powered, and then that would provide power through the copper connection to the additional antenna that we would deploy. Okay. So if this was our basic system, the next step we could go into.
Do you want to put a switch in that drawing, or?
Sure. You want to do a hub?
Yeah.
Sure. So you can do a hub for a couple different reasons. So if we pop in a hub, if we pop in a copper hub, okay, we can, if you need to delete a line drawing or if you need to delete anything, you would just right click on it and delete connection, okay? So you can use the hubs in a couple of various ways. Its initial connection would be to the base station, and then you would feed all of your transceivers off of that, okay? So if we wanted to feed it in, it comes into its initial port here because you have a copper or fiber input to it, okay? And now you can take all these particular ports and run them directly to antennas. So this is one option. Now, when deploying the system, it's extremely important that how you see it here drawn is exactly how you plug in the antennas and the devices in the network, because everything is identified by the port that it's plugged into. So these particular ports that you see here that are empty at the moment, they do provide CrewNet. So if you were to plug a device into there, the device would see the network. However, it would not know who it is. So
basically, the way you draw it, you have to plug it in that way.
Exactly. On the bottom of an RT, you can see on here, so you have the input port, so you have copper or your fiber input connection, okay? And then you have your loop through port. Right next to the loop through port, there's a couple button LED indicators that say transmit, receive, and mode, okay? Your CrewNet buttons, your CrewNet LED lights down here will flash when it sees the network. However, unless it's an identified device and knows who it is, the transmit and receive buttons down here will not, or LED lights will not light. So once you connect it to a valid port, you'll see these 2 lights light up, and it'll give you an indicator that it's on the network and it knows who it is. So you can use a hub to distribute these antennas. So your base station and your hub could live at your truck, okay? Like we could make this We can delete this. We can take this and put this on fiber. Now our hub, or our CU would live at the truck, because that gives you easy access to your 4-wire and your 2-wire interface to the truck. And then your hub can go out to the field to wherever maybe your set is, or whatever location you'd like to deploy it. And then your antennas that would then connect via copper. Okay.
And again, that hub needs to have the same power supply that you would put on an antenna to run it.
Correct.
Now,
So,
I do have a question from Jason Glass that can you use
Sure.
PoE injectors to power the antennas?
there's always the copper connections always have PoE on them. There is a 48 volt PoE coming through them from all the various power
Right,
supplies.
but standard PoE injectors won't work. It has to be the CrewCom hubs or antennas to supply it.
Correct. Or you can use a copper hub. So this is one way to deploy just antennas. Okay, so if we had a CU left at the truck, we'd connect via fiber to our outside location and then connect our antennas. What you can also do is, if we were getting into a scenario where we needed multiple base stations, okay, we had multiple base stations, we can utilize, so the master base station is the one that holds your CCF file. That's what it tells everything else to do. Your slaves actually don't get a profile when you're building it, when you're building an initial CCF file. You load it only into the master, and then every device after that will then pull the information from the master and know who it is based upon what port you plugged in.
What happens if that master unit goes offline?
If it goes offline, that's the unit that would take your you would take you offline, because that's where your master file is stored for all the information.
And there's a separate Ethernet connection into there other than the CrewNet connection to actually connect to your computer.
Correct. There is a LAN connection on the opposite side. Yep. So you don't connect during the CrewNet ports. Don't plug in your computer to the CrewNet port, because, like we said, there is voltage on those lines, so you could blow up your NIC card. So what we could do is use our copper hub here to distribute to our base stations.
Jason also asked, if you're on fiber, you still have to power the hub or the antenna using the power supply that comes with the antennas. At least the first antenna, and then 7 antennas after that will be powered. Right.
Right. Your initial
whatever's the first in the chain. If it's coming in fiber into the antenna, you power your first antenna, and then everything else will get PoE from that first antenna. If you're coming fiber into a copper or into a fiber hub, that fiber hub would need the local power, and then everything else would PoE off that hub. So it's just whatever's the first part of the chain, then in theory you can PoE after that.
Right. So, and like we said earlier with the antennas, you can then daisy chain up to 7 antennas after this on copper. You could just loop through before the power supply before you would overwhelm the power supply. So your copper connection here, you can then utilize to distribute your information from your master to your slave base stations. Oh, why did that not connect there? Okay. So now in this scenario, if we had multiple base stations, because now in this case you could get up to 12 4-wire ports and 12 channels of 2-wire, you could then add in a fiber hub. Okay. So the fiber hub here would allow you, it's the same thing as the copper hub, it's just the inverse. So now you have the 7 ports of copper here, you now have 7 ports of fiber, and then 1 copper fiber connection. So now you would copper these together. Okay. At the truck end, when you're deploying this or building this, if you were to go this route, your CUs and your copper and your fiber hub actually can marry together. There's a 1 RU bracket. These are half RU rack units, and there's a bracket that allow them to marry together to make a 1 RU housing. So now you can take your fiber and you can connect via fiber to all of your antennas in the field. like Peter said, every one of these antennas that you would then go to, you would have to locally power every antenna that was here. Okay.
Now, one trick that I learned in the shop when I was prepping this is, since you have to draw the drawing exactly the way you're going to use it, and later on, if you add hardware or change hardware, at least on the version of the software I was using, you then had to do a full reboot of the system to take it in. But one trick is over-program your system. If an output is going to have one antenna, put 3 antennas on it, 4 antennas on it. They just won't be active. They will be grayed out if you don't plug an antenna in there. And then you don't have to do any changes in the system at all when you plug in the hardware. The new version of the software, though, I think does away with that problem.
Right. So we're working currently in version 1.402. Like Peter said, there is a new version that actually was released like 2 days ago, which is version 1.8. The manufacturers recommended that if you didn't build your system larger than you needed it. So, okay, so there's a lot of things you can do online when you're online with the base station in terms of connectivity to your bell packs that you can control. The things that you can't control are fundamental parts of the system. Like Peter said, if you need an extra antenna and there's not one in your initial drawing, you have to then take out your profile. You'd have to delete the profile from the system and upload a whole new profile, which is a sequence of power cycles and a few things. It takes a few minutes, and depending on where you are in your show or potentially in your rehearsal, you may not be able to drop the system for very long, if you can even drop it at all.
Yeah, let me just describe that a little bit. But first, we had a question from Ryan. Can you daisy chain antennas off an RT or a hub? Yes, if you're going fiber to a location and you power that hub or power the antenna it goes to, then up to 7 antennas can be powered off of that antenna's loop through.
Correct.
And then after 7 antennas, you just power another antenna with a plug in the line, and you can power more. But the process for if you're making a major change in the drawing is you literally have to go to the control unit, scroll through the menu, delete the profile, do a reset, then load the new profile, then do a reset. So and the resets are several minutes long. So the whole process is 5 to 7 minutes to change your profile in the system. It's not a dynamic thing that can be done live.
Right. So in the previous software version to 1.4, there was not an upload feature. There is now an upload feature up here that if you're online, there's an upload file. It's grayed out now because I'm not online. But so if you're online, you can live upload a file. However, the catch to that is you still have to do the power cycle. Right. So you don't have the initial drawing. The initial way you had to do this was you had to take your file, you built your file offline, put your file onto a thumb drive. You would then have to put the thumb drive in the front of the unit while the unit was off, power up the unit, wait for it to go through its whole cycle to either tell you it had a file or it didn't have a file. If it had a file, you'd have to go to delete system configuration. So you'd tell it to wipe out the file it had. It would then prompt you to power cycle your unit. So you would shut the unit off. You'd turn the unit back on, let it run through its whole cycle again. So now each time this is a 2 to 3 minute process. So it would come back up and it would say, what do you want to do? And you'd say, I'd upload this file. You'd choose the file off the thumb drive, upload the file. It would tell you it took the file, but it needs a power cycle. Now you'd have to power cycle it again. So when you drop it, then you can remove your thumb drive. And when it wakes back up, it will have the profile that you had. But
all the importance in over programming your layout, your system. So if you put a hub in and you're only going to use 2 outputs from that hub, put a bunch of antennas on the other outputs. Put antennas on every output in your drawing, so you don't have to go through this reloading of the profile.
Right, and that goes through with the conferences, with the profiles that you build for the bell packs as well. You might as well take advantage of it and do it all. And I always try to overbuild everything. So add in extra antennas, extra conferences, extra profiles for all my, if somebody comes up with a bell pack that needs something. So that way it's all there and available to you, and you don't have to go through that sequencing.
Now, if I remember right, what you have to put in, when you put conferences in, it requires a new profile as well. However, if you put in
No,
a
it
bunch
doesn't.
of oh, it doesn't? Okay. You can
No,
add
you
those
just need
dynamically.
those live on the fly.
The profiles can be either a single profile, and then you can give everybody the same profile, or everybody can get their own individual profile. But the
No.
conferences
Let's not use the word profile, because profile applies to this drawing. You're talking about roles.
well, they call it a profile. So
Well,
the role that you refer to, which is
right.
your bell pack, they call it a
Right.
profile. So this would just be your CCF file, your main program file.
Right.
So those are some of the things that you know, in terms of deployment, how you can utilize the different devices that are available to you.
So other than hardware configuration, there's no situation where you have to reload the profile into the CCU.
Correct.
Into
It's
the CU.
it's a
right.
physical hardware thing. Yeah.
Okay. Now before in the system, the version I had, if I plugged in an antenna that I'd already programmed in the system and it was grayed out, I also had to reset the system to get it to work.
Right. It was recommended by the manufacturer to do that. It was 90+% of the time it would work. Sometimes it wouldn't work, and that would require a reboot. They also ask you to take all the devices down, and then you would bring up all your field devices first, and then you would bring up the master. And you bring up the master first, let that run its cycle for a little bit, and then you would bring the slaves online, because once the master's up, then the slaves pull all the information from the master. At least that's the
changed.
sequencing that I've always done. Now they say in the new version of 1.8, which was released earlier this week, so long as the antenna or that device is in your initial drawing, it will accept it at any time, and you don't have to go through that power cycle. So let's get a little bit into the devices here, some of the places that you can get caught up. So you have the device management page here, okay? So that you would select your control units. This is where all your 2-wire and your 4-wire ports are then named, and all your nomenclature is. And you would turn it on and off here. By default,
And we're
everything
seeing
is
3 control units here.
correct. In this drawing, I had 3 control units here.
Yeah, that's another advantage
So
for adding control units is you add more inputs and outputs to the system.
Correct. This comes into play. You can do it up to 4. So that allows you to get 16 channels of 2-wire, 16 channels of 4-wire. This has come into play a lot for Kevin and I in a lot of the scenarios where we're doing REMIs, and they don't want to use any 2-wire in the system because of feedback to whatever control room they're talking to across the country. So it allows us just to add in more 4-wire capability and be able to expand the system. So in this scenario, you would see it here. You can name your device name is here. Okay. So the device names are what you'll see in the drawings. That's what you would see up here. Okay. We go here, we'll call this the master. All right. So then you would see master would show up here. Okay.
Can you name them on that page too? On the diagram page?
No, because if you double click on it, it actually opens up it'll open up the page. So you can now do it from here.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different ways to look at this. You can look at it in this view, or you can double click it open and see it in a much larger scale, or you can look at it in the list view the whole time. Okay. So this would be slave number 1, right? Now some of the things you'll notice, this IP address will default across the board. Okay, 192.168.1.1, but its default is actually to have the DHCP turned on all of these. So if you were setting your IP address, if you're putting the control surface in a network, which you can do, you can't put CrewNet in a network, but you can put the control layer in a network. you need to, you know, either know what your IP address is going to be, or you can use your DHCP right there. Okay. As well as the other information to your subnet and your gateway. Okay. If you want to go to your next base station, you just click next here. Okay. You know, this would be slave number 2, right? You can scroll down here and you can see all your 2-wire and your 4-wire connections down here. Okay. In their world, 1 through 4 are the 2-wire connections, their ports, and then 5 through 8 are the 4-wire connections. So you would turn them on here. So you can tell, you can actually select. Here's the nice thing is you can select, am I RTS channel 1 or am I RTS channel 2? You can also do audio comm and ClearCom, depending on your pin out and what you're connecting to. Now, unlike some of the previous products where if you plugged, you know, a 1/2 SAP panel, wet 2 channel coming into this port, it will not fail over and give you the B side on this port because you physically told it only take RTS channel 1. Okay. You'd have to come over here, tell it to take RTS channel 2. So what we recommend doing is the initial 2-channel input to this, you would Y cord on the back of the base station and plug it into A and B. And then
So
it
that
kills the
means
pins.
if from the truck, they're sending you a 2-channel feed on one cable, like dialed up production over lighting, for instance. So that'll be on pins 2 and 3. So you can need to Y it into both of those inputs and then choose the channel you want out of those inputs.
Right, and it will null out the pin. So in the RTS world, you know, this would be 1 and 2, and then this would be 1 and 3. You know,
Right.
it'll kill out the respective pins. You want it to be duplex, obviously, and then if you wanted to change it here, you know, this could be cams, you know, lights, you know, however you wanted to call that. Now remember your nomenclature here because you also have to tie this to a conference. Okay, so your conferences are available here. We haven't built any yet, so we'll get there in just a moment. Okay, and then you have
Don't they have to be a
down
different
here.
name than the 2-wire names? If we had a conference called
They can
CAMS.
be the same, but you get very confused. So I would certainly name it something, you know, if I named it, you know, this would be A2 4-wire, you know,
Right.
this could be stage 4-wire, right? So now when we go into our conference management and we make an A2 conference or an A2 PL, in their world they call it a conference, but it's very similar to a PL. It can be virtual or it can be tied to an external channel by just selecting it here. So, you know, you just want to turn these on. We'll turn all these on just so we have them. Okay. And you would do that for every base station that you have, or however much connectivity you have. So if you only have 4 channels, but you have, you know, 24 packs, you'd have 2 base stations, but you might not have to turn on those ports on the slave. I would recommend you do, just so that they're there and they're available to you, and you don't have to potentially go through a weird, you know, the base station could wake up weird and need a power cycle. You know, just to avoid that, I would just turn them on just to play it safe.
Now I noticed you've got your IP address of the CU and your gateway set to be the same. That's not normally the way you'd set up the gateway, right?
This is actually the default. So yeah, so this would
So-
either want to be changed, or right now it's set up to DHCP. So,
Right. So you would put in a real IP address for the CU and leave the gateway where it is.
correct. And then you would do the same thing. So if we go to the list view, we now can also go to our transceivers.
Well, real quick, you would do that on the IP address if you're putting each individual base station on the network. If you're only doing your master on the network, you only really need to worry about the IP address for the master. Because
Is there any reason to put the other CUs on the network?
There shouldn't be, because they
Right.
all link through the CrewNet and the programming internally. So you only need the one to attach to the network side to do the crewware.
And if
So-
your main unit died, the profile is not in the secondary units
Right.
at all.
Correct.
Is there any
Correct.
way is there any way to put that in and just have it there on standby?
I don't
Not
believe
that I'm
so.
aware of. Certainly have to ask the CrewCom guys, but I'm not that I'm aware of that. There's no like hot standby that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So in here, you could change your antenna names. You know, if this would be the, you know, hallway. You know, this could be a locker room A, you know.
And each antenna does
B.
10 belt packs, correct?
6.
6 belt packs, okay.
Each one does 6. So now in our system design, you would notice here are our antennas as we deploy them. So you have the hallway here, locker room B, locker room A. So it'll make it easier for you to tell, you know, in your deployment of what should be connected and where it should be connected. On here, it'll tell you also these little bubbles. Each one of these bubbles is a belt pack. So if they're green, you have a good connection. As they start to go orange and red, it'll show you that that particular belt pack's battery is starting to die, and you probably want to find that person to get it replaced. But if you hover over it, it'll give you the telemetry of who it is that's actually connected to it. So it'll make it easier to determine who that particular person is and how you can find them. So we'll get into conferences. So your conferences are your PL channels. This is where you could create your ISO channels, which there's another way to do ISO channels, but you could do your ISO channels. You could do all your virtual channels of anybody, just belt pack to belt pack. But this is also where you would tie in your 4-wire applications and your 2-wire applications into the outside world.
How
So
many conferences can you have? No limit,
I believe it's 128.
right?
So, you know, we just tie in our conferences here. We change our conference name. You know, this could be A2. Come on. Stage. And now we would go back to our
And you have to
device
put in
management.
they have to put in the short name too.
The
Which shows-
conference
that
name
shows
that you
on
see
the-
here, the long name, you would
Right.
see in all the devices. The short name stuff is what you would see in the belt packs.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, so this would be A2. So this can be the same as your
Up
as
to
your
how
long
many
name.
characters?
I believe it's 8.
8.
It shows correctly, shows nicely on the belt packs.
Will it prevent you from putting in something longer than 8?
I don't think so. Kev, do you know about that?
I mean, try typing it in, see what happens.
No, I think you're limited to 8.
Come on. Yeah, so it locked me out.
Okay. Now, right there is where you can specify that a conference has an ISO channel.
Correct. So you can do ISOs
And that is
one of 2 ways.
accessed on the belt pack by pushing the volume control in.
Correct. So there's 1 of 2 ways to do an ISO. Either you can create a virtual conference and make it a physical button, you know, because everybody has 4 buttons on the belt packs. So you could make it a physical channel that would be assigned to one of these buttons. Or like Peter said, if we select our ISO enabled here, and in the belt pack, in the profile, you allowed somebody. Now, this particular channel, if this was our A2 channel, right? This would be your main A2 button pushing to your outside world and to everybody, you know, to everybody. Now, if you enabled your ISO would be a push on the volume button on the top, and that would only be whom you designated. So in your profiles, even though it's designated under A2, you may only give 2 of your 6 A2s the ISO capability.
And that's a belt pack by belt pack click on.
Correct. So in the world of, you know, in the world of BTR and previous, that would be your WTA.
Except
It would only go
everybody
belt
on
pack to
that
belt
channel
pack.
would be all belt packs. This way you can choose only a couple of the belt packs on a particular
Correct.
profile.
Correct.
Right. So if you're in a situation where you have like 8 stage managers, but 2 primaries, you could do an ISO between the 2 primaries on the stage manager channel, and those 2 would have that conversation and no one else would hear it unless you talk in just the generic stage manager channel, then all the stage managers would hear. So it's sort of, you can limit who has that ISO and not, even though they're on the same channel.
So typically you'd have an A2 talking to a stage manager, or at least a couple of stage managers. So on the audio channel, you would have that A2 and a couple of stage managers so they could get hold of them to have somebody mic'd up.
So
the
as
stage
long as
manager
they had that, as long as they both had those channels, the A2 had a stage manager channel in his button, in his key panel, and
So-
the stage manager had the
So
the A2.
maybe then rather than use up that on that ISO capability on the A2 channel, it might be all the A2s. You'd create another party line that is just stage manager A2.
Right.
Right, that's sort
Yeah,
of
you
the,
could-
the
you-
virtual conference or the virtual
Right.
channel, just add another conference. It's not
Right.
layered to an external, but it's just done internally, yeah.
You could do this,
Yep.
you can do something like that.
Yep.
Right now, when we go to our devices, we go to our control units. You would choose in your 4-wire configuration over here. We'll turn our 4 wires on, right? You'd pick your conferences here. So now this would be stage A2, this would be stage, but I would not assign the stage A2 ISO to a 4-wire or a 2-wire port. I would only, that would be only left internally as a wireless ISO or a WTA.
Sure.
It's, at that point, it's a virtual conference. So that's how to make a conference and how to assign it to, the outside world. The next step would be what they call a profile, or in other manufacturers' terms, this would be called a role. You can do one role for everybody, so everybody gets the same 4 channels, but you do still have individual belt pack control of volumes and stuff like that for these particular people. But if somebody wanted a change in one channel, it would be a global change for all. Or what I like to do is create a profile for everybody, or a role
Can you
for
clone?
everybody.
Can you create one and then clone it over and over and over
Yes.
again for 10 people?
Yep. So we would come here to add a profile. Okay. So this is our initial profile. We want to call it, A2 lead, right? Right. So there's our long and our short, right? So if we double click on it, it'll open up into our device menu. Okay. So now some of the things to
go
be,
back to that prior screen.
sure.
You added a profile and it defaults to a 2.4 gig belt pack.
Correct. That's
Which
default is
because we're not
2.4.
using it. So you have to make sure you set that for 900.
Right. So we would do that. There's 2 ways to notice what Peter said. You can either see it here on this initial screen that you're, so you can tell that it's a 44 as well. So the 44 is the 4-channel button, or they have a 22, which is the 2-channel belt packs. Okay. In this scenario, we only have the 44s, but you would double click on it and it would open up, and that particular model is right here. Okay. So this, you can catch it on the first screen. You can catch it here. Or another indicator that I like to use a lot is this radio transceiver list over here. Since we know that we've already built a diagram and we've added in antennas to the system, we don't see any of them here, okay? It's not telling us that we have any access. So if we come here and we drop in our 944, now all of a sudden we have transceivers available to us because it knows that we're part of the system. Okay.
So back in in profile management screen, can you add a profile of a 900 directly?
No, its default is 2.4. You have
So
to
you're
change it
always
here.
going to have to go through into the belt packs
Into
and
the
switch them
screen.
over to 900.
Correct. Because some of the other things that you'll notice in here as we go through. So now we've created our belt pack. We're in normal mode. You can run in high density mode, which is something that's going to come out later on down the road. And the nice thing about this particular system that a lot of other ones don't have is you now have access to these antennas. But if you want to zone people out, you just simply take it away. So in this particular profile, they don't have access to antennas 5 and 6, wherever those might be. In this scenario, maybe this is a producer that only works in locker rooms. right?
So
So now we
the
don't want them going out on the field.
so the antenna access is on a bell pack by bell pack basis, profile by
Correct.
profile basis.
Profile by profile basis, right? So now this particular person can only roam in the locker rooms, right? If they come out on the field, they're not going to grab a time slot. You know, they're not going to grab one of our 6 slots per antenna that becomes so valuable when you start to get all these people congregating in one area. Because who knows, that person may roam out on the field, and then all of a sudden you have a stage manager that lost a time slot, or you have, you know, an A2 that lost a time slot because they walked away for a minute and this guy grabbed it in the intern of them coming back. As we scroll down, you get into your buttons here. Your buttons are by defaulted all disabled. So you'd want to stick those all as either momentary, latching, always on. Those are your options. I always start with momentary unless I absolutely trust the person that I know to do a latch.
Is there anywhere where these defaults can be set differently?
Not that I'm aware of yet. And then you would choose your conference of whatever you wanted to put on here, right? So this guy wants A2. They come up in alphabetical order. So you'd have your stage. Maybe this guy wants to be part of the ISO with the stage managers, right? Now, on the right-hand side, you'll see your minimum and maximum volume. The minimum volume is nice because there's a lot of times, you know, you're bumping around as an A2 and all of a sudden, you know, you don't hear anything anymore. And you just think it's been radio silent, but it really hasn't. And you just missed a lot. So because as you were bumping around, you rolled your volume encoder and dropped the volume. So now you can make this as a minimum volume so it never goes below. So you always hear what's going on. Its default is 0, so it will roll all the way down to nothing. But you have the option to set that at a higher threshold so that whomever it is will always hear something. And then you would scroll down the bottom. There's 2 function buttons on either side as well. These are these 2 little buttons down here and down here. Okay. A lot of times those are used for your SA. It can be used to trigger a relay. There is also an aux feature in there and a call feature. So that's up to you if you want to use them.
Is the aux just another output? Is the aux another output like SA is another output? What is the aux?
Yeah, there's an aux input and an aux output on the CUs, on each CU. They're
Right.
1/4-inch jacks. So you have the option to make another 4-wire channel quasi. You could do it with that if you wanted to do that. You would lose a little bit of your side tone.
What do you mean?
Or it's just you would lose your, you wouldn't have any side tone with the way that the aux comes in and out. Because you'd be coming in on one.
So the aux doesn't automatically mix minus from the out, the in from the out?
I don't believe so.
So it's not really a 4-wire in.
Right, because they can be split. You can use them for 2 different things. Like an aux in could be a program. You could put program in on a 2-wire. You could put program in on a 4-wire channel. However you were designing your system, whatever was was best for you. And then your aux out could be used for a second SA. So they are 2 split things. And that's a 1/4-inch jack that's on the back of the CU. And then down the bottom, you have your mic gains and stuff like that for this particular profile. Now, once you get your initial profile built, you can clone it. The clone features up here in the top, right? So we can clone it. Now you get up to as many times as we wanted. Okay. If we go back to our list view, you would now see all your profiles coming up here. Okay. You can get a quick snapshot by just dropping this menu down to show what they have on the bell packs, what channels they have. If you wanted to change it, obviously you'd have to double click on it, open it up into this other menu, and then make a change from here.
So I noticed that the bell pack type and band copied with it. So what you want to do is on your initial profile, make sure before you go in and do a clone, you have set that. So then when you do the clones, those copied all straight through.
Right. And I've gotten burned where I come in and I'm just like, oh, let me add a profile. And I drop in these profiles and I create, 10 profiles, but they're all 2.4. So now I have to individually go back into every one and change them all out here.
So So
Yeah.
then what maybe is the way to do it, the way Ryan suggests, is create a profile which has everything in the bell pack you like, the way it's set, the volumes, the everything, all your base things, what channel you're on, your base volume controls, everything, and then clone to all of them, and then make a minor adjustments on them as you go along. Or maybe clone one, go in, change the people that are on the channels, clone a bunch for the stage managers, copy another one from the master, you know, maybe call the first one default.
Right. So
Yeah,
you
that's
can
that's
do
basically
that.
what I do.
Yeah, yeah.
You can do a couple of different things because you have the ability to zone. You know, I saw there was a question about the zoning. So the zoning does follow. So if you have here, so once we clone this profile, the next profile has the same antennas. So if you were making out different zones, make a profile for each zone. Like you said, make a default. And then you just clone that default and then just change the name on that to be whomever you want it to be.
Rather than having to edit all the antenna settings every time.
Correct. So however you want to zone it out, make a default profile for each one of those. You can have as many profiles as you want. You can overbuild your profiles for your bell packs. So you make your defaults and then clone your defaults depending on who it is and what they would need.
And so far, all of this editing can be done dynamically live on the system.
Correct. All this stuff you can change live. You can change button assignments, radio transceiver assignments. You can change all of it.
Now, on that screen there somewhere, where do you, it says upload changes. When you actually upload, the bell packs that you're uploading to will go offline for 2 seconds or so, right?
Right. It's up to like 5 seconds depending on how much information you're changing.
Okay, so it's you have to make sure you let the people know, I'm going to upload a new profile to you, be offline for 5 seconds.
Correct. They'll hear their audio dip out and then the audio will come back.
Right.
So
and actually displays on the screen of the bell pack uploading profile, and you get a progress bar so they can see how long it takes.
Correct.
Right. So if we wanted to, so now you've got your initial, your design, you've gone through, turned all your stuff on and off. We might as well just change all these, turn them all on, just by default.
Now, if you
can also use this as a 2 to 4 wire.
The two wires, do they not actually go on until they have voltage coming into them?
They can act one of two ways. There is a loop out, so you can actually pass through the voltage, but they just kind of sit idle until you stick something into them.
But in other words, they must sense the voltage from the 2 wire coming in, or else they go into feedback.
Correct. There's a little red LED light on the back that'll light up when you plug it in.
And where do you know those 2 wires?
I think that is
it's in the device. A double click.
You come down here. It's right here, null port right there.
Okay.
So it's on an individual channel basis. You can know that there.
And you have defaulted to echo cancellation on. Is that what you would recommend?
That's the default. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And this is where now what's the range on your level control on the ports?
So you can go down to a -10.
Right.
To a +10.
Same on the 4 wires?
It's the same on both. Yep. That's there, -10, +10. On the 4 wires are the same. Yeah, -10, +10.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't go to 11.
We can make it go to 11. Talk louder.
In here, since we're on the base stations, this is where your auxiliary input and output would be assigned. This is where we're showing that it's actually split. So if you want to utilize this, you'd have to you give it an assignment, right? So if we wanted to add, we can add it to a conference. So you could create in your conference world, you could create a program, right? So if we go back to our conference. All right, so this would be program.
So couldn't that port be put directly on the bell pack?
The aux.
Right.
Rather
Rather than putting the program input into a conference.
Well, no,
Right,
you have to, 'cause you have to assign the aux somewhere.
Right. And the buttons, the buttons only look at the conferences. You'll see here, it only looks for a conference.
Okay. Okay.
So you could tell it that this is program, right? In our device management, we'd come back down here. Oops. So auxiliary input, you would tell it you're going to be part of the program, and then you would have level control on it here, or you can mute it as needed. And then your output would be the same thing. So if you had a set, SA number 2, you'd create a conference, SA 2. Right. You come here to your aux. So add an assignment. This would be SA number 2. And then once again, you have level control, and you have, and then you'd have the mute capabilities as well.
Now it looks like you can add lots of assignments here. Why would you add more than one assignment?
I don't know. You could do it, send it into multiple places.
What are the options for where you send it? Only conferences? Only conferences.
Yes, only conferences.
So the only advantage is that is you can set different levels of whatever that is in different conferences, but it doesn't do anything beyond that.
Right. Or you can set, well, no, there's only one aux in on per base station. So you'd have to go per base, and then each one you could have program 1, program 2, program 3. You could,
if you're doing different programs, you can use the auxes on all the CUs for different programs. But here you're going in only one aux audio input, and you can create multiple places. And I noticed there's a lock sliders. You can uncheck that lock sliders when you actually have something down below there. Assign that to another conference. The second one, assign the one to another conference.
This guy here.
Yeah, any other conference.
No.
Now that you've assigned that program in to the stage manager channel, that's feeding program into the stage manager channel.
Correct.
So
now you have volume control on it too.
Yeah, select both of those on the left and little check boxes there. And you should be able to uncheck lock sliders, but it doesn't seem to allow you to do that.
No. You only have a master volume.
I wonder if that's a feature that is not a feature yet.
That's entirely possible. Yeah.
Because I can see a use for this.
This will allow you to bleed program into every channel and have a volume control on every.
But no individual volume control to them, unfortunately.
Well, so you could do it one of two ways. You could either have a specific conference called program, and then they would have just program as its own encoder
on their own knob. Yes,
on their own profile. Or if you had somebody that had needed 4 channels and needed program, you could now bleed program into the other channels, into the conferences.
And you'd have to do that on a new conference that's only them. How would you do it on the stage A2 conference? It's only one of the people wanted program mixed into it. Would have to be into the whole conference so everybody heard it.
Right. Everybody would hear it. Yeah. Like Kevin and I work with an A1 that likes to have a microphone in the room. So you could then take that mic as an ISO mic, so he doesn't have to key anything up,
Right.
And you could bleed that in directly into the A2 channel. So that mic is always hot to the A2s.
So those volume controls.
Or you could do this with a director hot mic too. You could take a director hot mic.
Those volume controls there, the gray ones, don't do anything. They don't even move.
Right.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to get with our folks at Pliant. That might be in the new 1.8 version.
Right.
So, and then you have your stage announce down here as well. And your, your volume output.
Also plus and minus 10, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. 10 dB swings.
And the relay assignments, is that a relay in the CU?
It's a new feature. Actually, it gets getting released in the 1.8. That the relays are connected. Yep. So on 1.8, this is active in 1.8. So I'm not quite as familiar with it yet because I haven't played with it.
Right.
I see a question about ClearCom. Let's see.
Yeah, do the two wires accept one or two of a ClearCom 2-channel wire? Well, they would be exactly the same as RTS. If you have a 2-channel ClearCom channel, it will come in just like an RTS.
Right. So otherwise, if you're a single channel ClearCom, it does have an option for single channel ClearCom there.
But he's talking about 2-channel ClearCom, which is exactly the same format. Same format as RTS, right?
RTS, right.
And by the same token, if that 2-channel RTS, the TW line basically comes in on one XLR, you'd Y connect it to the 2 inputs with a regular Y cable. So correct. Channel 1, you'd select to channel, it would say RTS channel 1 to get ClearCom channel 1 out. And the only difference is it would be 10 dB down from your normal RTS connection.
Because aren't the channel numbers opposite?
No.
ClearCom channel 1 comes up as RTS channel 2, I believe.
No. If you plug a ClearCom TW box, if you plug a standard ClearCom into an RTS channel, what you get is channel 2. Because channel 2 is on pin 3. Channel 1 is on pin 1. Same on a ClearCom 2 channel. I think. That's a good question, because normal ClearCom channel 1 comes in on pin 3. Does a TW switch it?
No, I don't think it does. I think it just adds the other channel. So I think the channel numbering in ClearCom is the opposite of the channel numbering in RTS.
And that's why on Thursday, the 30th, we will have the CrewCom folks on. We can do even deeper dive with that specifically, right? We'll put that one on our list right now.
Sure. Ryan, the aux out is a 1/4-inch phone plug, as the aux in is a 1/4-inch phone plug, TRS, and the SA is an XLR out.
Correct. So if we build our standard, so we built our profile, we built our initial file, right? If we want to go online, you'd go online up here in the top corner where it says we're currently offline. So you'd check on that. We don't really need this file. So let me close this. No. Okay, because otherwise it's gonna get confused. So if we want to go online, the way to get online is the IP address of your device. I know that this is where this one is right now. Oh, actually, this one's not that one.
So at this point, do we want to simplify that profile so it's just down to one CU, one antenna, and program a few belt packs into it?
Sure. Yeah, we could do that. So this is what it would look like when you're online.
So that's the file, my file, basically.
This is the file that you had. I loaded this into the CU.
Right.
So this is telling you currently that anything grayed out is what I'm missing at the moment.
Right.
Anything that's plugged in is stuff that it currently sees on the system.
Got it. So that gives us one CU, a copper hub, and one 900 antenna.
Right. So now if I wanted to register a belt pack, right? So if we look at our profile management, just make sure that we have profiles here, and we do. Okay. On the front of the unit, there's a USB port. standard USB to a micro USB. Okay, you plug in the USB end in the front of the unit. On the side of the belt packs, there's a little USB port on the side. You plug it in. It'll power up. The unit doesn't have to be on. It'll power up on its own. So now the first thing it does is it goes through a firmware check to make sure that it's up to date, that the firmwares match. If not, it's going to tell you have to do a firmware update. Okay, I can go through
And
that
can
a little
that
bit.
be done right away, or do they
Yeah.
from that point? Okay.
So now it comes up. I don't know if you can read it, but it
If you
asks
get
me
closer, we
what
can.
program.
Closer.
Can I
Closer.
come closer?
That's a little out of focus there. It's hard to see.
Yeah. So it's telling you what profile do I want to be. Okay.
Okay.
So you'd use your encoder up here.
Right.
Can scroll through. Okay. And you would just hit the button.
Right.
Enter. Sorry, it's this. It's the function button down here. Okay. So now
Does
it's
that?
up. So now it tells you profile applied, pairing complete. Please disconnect the radio pack. Okay. So I disconnect.
Now, is
The
that
power button.
locked into that belt pack? That profile is locked into it.
Now that profile is in this belt pack.
So there's no way to set the system so it comes up and doesn't have an automatic profile that you have to then select the profile every single time when you power it up?
Correct. Your initial build. So what you can do is your initial build, you have to pair the belt pack with the base station. Now, once you've done that, if you make changes to your system file, it will prompt you and say, hey, do you want me to retain all the belt packs? Do you want me to keep them all in here? And you just say yes. And then all your belt packs will then remember who they are as they change through.
No, what I was asking is, for instance, on FreeSpeak, when you pair a belt pack and assign it to a profile and then power the belt pack down, turn it back on, it will not be linked to that profile at that time. It will want you to re-enter the profile that you want on it.
Like
right.
the,
You can also, yeah, go ahead, Kev.
like the FreeSpeak, when you lock a profile, like a roll to a belt pack, that's
Right.
what this acts like naturally. Once we've done this
That's the
pairing,
default.
yeah, now
That's
it's
the
set.
default.
Yeah, so this is now channel. This is my pack 1. If I turn
Right.
it off, turn it back on, it will always be profile 1. So like
Got
if I
it.
call this is my pack and it's Kevin's. Every time I turn this one belt pack on, it's always going to be Kevin. So you don't have to go
So-
select it every time.
Right.
Now,
So I
if
turn this
I-
belt pack on. The power button's down here on the bottom.
Right.
So now it's fired up. What you'll see is, if it gets in focus. No.
Talk to your cameraman and get him to focus it a little
Yeah.
bit.
You'll see the 2 channels there.
You know what'll be
lights and
better?
stage
If you
manager.
unshare the screen,
Sure, I got it, Brian.
No, it doesn't matter. Unshare the screen so we can see your video, your camera larger. Just click on the stop sharing button. There we go.
All right, you guys see me?
Yep.
It's not.
So now you, let me turn the backlight on.
There we go. Now we got it. Now
Okay.
we got it.
So now you have
Stage
lights and
manager.
stage manager, right? Because this is the
Right.
profile that I chose. You'll see
Yep.
your antenna strength here. The 99s are your RSSI, and then your battery
Right.
level as well. Okay.
Yep.
And then the pack 8C is how it's identified in the system. Okay. So if I bring my screen back up, everybody sees that again.
Yep.
Okay. I see my screen. So now you can see here the one RT that's connected. Okay. It sees the time slot that I grabbed. Okay. Tells you it's pack 8C, which I can see on the front of the belt pack as well, just to verify. Okay. And if I scroll down here in the bottom, it should be lit up green right there. Okay. Pack 8C. Now, one of the new features that Pliant has come out with in version 1.8 is in your profile management, you now have groups available to you, which allows you to color code all your belt packs or your profiles. So once you assign it, it'll come up here in a color coded pattern, and allow you to, so you can assign your A2s one color, your stage managers one color, your light guys another path. So
Where's the
you
color?
know that it's not in this version. It's in version 1.8. It's the new version.
Where will be the color be?
It'll be down in this lower left screen down here.
So instead of
right now
green,
where
it will
HC
be
is.
different colors. Instead of green, it'll
No,
be
that'll
different
still
colors.
be green, but like this bar where it says edit, that would be a colored bar.
And
to show
can you right click and show them all in one group? Because what if you don't want them all separated out?
I don't know, just because I don't know much about that version yet.
But you can pull the bar in the horizontal bar between your diagram and there, move that up much higher and get a full screen of all your bell packs.
Yep, and you can also shrink your so
there we
this,
go. That's a good.
Minimize,
that's a
maximize.
much better show position.
So now these, where it says unassigned, these would then get broken up into categories or groups as they've chosen, and then you can allow you to sort them a little bit better. So that way, for troubleshooting purposes and trying to figure out bell packs, would be a little bit easier. So now, if you want to see your bell pack, you double click on it. Let me shrink my bar here just so they can see me. So this is the live status of the bell pack. So you'll see lights and stage manager. So now if I hit the talk key, now you see it's lighting up. So you can watch people in real time as they're going through. You know, if somebody's saying, "Oh, every time I key it up, it's not working," you know, you can watch them key it up and actually see if it actually is keying your, into your channel.
Can you remote control anything?
Yes. So here you have your gain controls for their mics. Okay. Depending on whether you have a dynamic mic and electric mic, this will auto sense which one you have. Your backlight, you know, you can change the battery alerts, and then this is the auto detect, or you can physically tell it it's a dynamic mic or it's an electric mic.
But you can't actually remote control the bell pack, like push a button.
I cannot like, right. So I can't like hit this button right now and key it up. And I can only watch them work in real time.
And I can't see how their volume controls are set.
Yes, you can. If you go back, Brian, if you expand up your back to your bottom bar where you're showing all the belt packs.
Yep.
If you list out and look at the belt pack that you're on, you can actually see the volume levels. It's kind of hard because it's small on this. You can actually see the volume levels turned on the knobs in that little square right there. So you can see what level they have the volumes at.
Oh yeah, it's very difficult.
Turn volume 1 up all the way.
You see,
okay, I sort of see it.
Like, see how the circle's moving?
Yep.
And the same thing when you key, that'll light up so you can see which channel they're talking on as well.
So key A. I got it.
And it lights up. So you can keep in this view and actually monitor what people are doing per belt pack.
Right.
And when to go directly to the editing of that belt pack, you can double click on that.
Double click on that, and that brings you here to your live status view of that belt pack. You can change your name of the belt pack here. Instead of pack 8C, we can call this.
What normally I'd be doing is changing their mic volume control. That's the first thing I'd want to do.
Right.
If they were too loud, not loud, I just want to change their mic volume control. And this is totally separate for each belt pack.
Correct.
Does that stay?
Now, if you want to edit their profile, if you want to edit, if they need these 3 and 4 channels that are currently not here, if they need those 3 and 4 channels, you'd have to go into profile management. Okay. So we can look here.
You can click right on edit profile, right on edit profile.
Yep. Or you can give them a different profile right from here.
But if you wanted to go directly to editing the current profile.
Right. You hit edit profile here.
Right. And then add a channel to their belt pack, and then tell them I'm about to upload to your belt pack. You'll be offline for 5 seconds.
Correct. So if I added in channel 3 and I hit upload changes, it's going to tell you, hey, you're going to go offline for a second, or please let your people know you're going to go offline.
So hold it up to the camera.
I shoot this up to the camera here.
We can't really see that, but yeah, we see it. We see it. Yeah.
So it's his profile up
there. We go.
Now it's
okay.
Back. Okay. So it's pretty quick. 2 to 5
And
seconds.
during that time, their mic is off.
Correct. So if they were talking on a channel or if they were latched on a channel, they will become unlatched. Unless,
Oh, okay.
unless it's selected here. You know, as
Always, right.
on. That's the only way.
Yeah, which
Right. That's the only way.
I don't think you'd ever do, right?
So, and then we mentioned the ISO earlier. So not only would you have to choose the ISO in the conference, but now if you wanted this particular person to have that ISO, you would select that here where it says ISO allowed. So now only the people that have it selected here on that particular channel will be part of that ISO group.
And when they're talking on the ISO group, the other people in that same profile that don't have that checked won't hear them.
Correct. That's specifically only for anybody that has this check mark active. So now if we wanted to load a new profile, so say we were, you know, you're changed your whole show and you want to upload a new profile. Oh, that's okay. You would you'd go over here to file, upload file. I know I have another one on the desktop. Yeah, Kevin's is here.
And when does the system go offline when you're doing that?
So it's going to tell you here you're uploading a new configuration. Okay.
Right.
It's going to tell you everything's going to need a power cycle. So,
Right.
but see this little checkbox here, maintain radio pack pairings. So now
this radio pairings, right?
Yep. So this radio pack, it will remember this radio pack, but it may not remember the profile, but it'll still be paired to the base station, and it's going to prompt you and say, "Hey, who do you want me to be?"
But if you're not changing, if let's say you're just changing, adding some antennas or something like that, it's going to still remember the bell packs will remember the profiles they're on.
Correct. Now, if you don't change anything, but you add an antenna, right? Say you add 2 antennas.
Right.
Okay. All your profiles stay the same, your conferences stay the same, all that stays the same. Those antennas will come up as options already defaulted to all of your profiles or your roles. So
As
if you
options
don't want them to have correct.
As
so if you don't want
options
somebody
on.
to have access to it, you'd have to turn it off. You'd have to go in and turn
Right.
it off. So this comes up and it tells you, you know, it comes up and says, "Are you sure you want to upload a new file?" You say,
Right.
"Yeah, I want to proceed." And then this goes through and tells you everything that's in your profile. So in this case, Kevin had 4 control units, 3 hubs, you know, 14 transceivers and 19 packs in the system. So you just say, "Sure, go ahead." Now it's going to boot me offline because in this case, I know the IP address changed, but it's still going to go through all of its own sequencing. And you have to do a power cycle. So I'm going to lose my LAN connection. So depending on how
bell pack just goes dead,
how
right?
long the bell pack, everything will go dead. Yep. Like right now. So right now it's still operating. Okay, this bell pack is still up. Okay, until I hit this. And now now I can see it on the front of the screen as I'm looking at the base station.
Offline, right?
Yeah,
Offline, right?
And it's telling me now everything has to be recycled. Like in here, I've lost my antennas now. Okay. So it's gone. So now I need to recycle the base station.
You have to manually do that?
Yes.
Yes, it's a power cycle.
Yeah, it's a full cycle. They say to recommend it to stay down for like
Well,
30
it seems
seconds
like
or so.
if you clicked on that, it should just do that itself. Right?
That could be a new feature.
What if the CU is not near you? What if the CU is in another location?
That's the problem. I've done a bunch of big shows where I leave my CU rack at the truck because it's easier for interfacing with the truck, and I'm controlling it out from the field. But then it's either you got to have somebody go back and do it, or you got to go back and do it, and it just, you know, flip it, wait 30 seconds, turn it back on.
Yeah, it seems like it needs to have a mode like in a laptop. You can click on restart instead of shut down.
Right, that's a good suggestion we should make to them.
Right.
No, I'm just waiting for the CU to reboot back up.
So again, the only times you need to do this to put a new profile in is when you have a change in the hardware diagram.
Right. Or in this case where Brian's literally switching from the show he was just showing you, which was yours,
To another show.
he's switching to my
Right,
combine
right.
show.
But
Right.
typically on a show, you wouldn't be changing anything. But if I can do all the other editing I want to do, all the conferences, all the bell packs, link bell packs, put assign roles, everything live on the system.
Correct.
So I'm sure the ultimate goal is for the software to automatically recognize plugging in hardware and not make it have to follow an exact diagram on the screen, right? If I ultimately down the line software, I think you plug in an antenna into a particular port, it will put the antenna in and draw the line into the port. Ultimately, I know it's not in the next version.
From a user standpoint, that would be fantastic.
Yes, right.
From the manufacturers, I'm not sure how that would play out with the way that they've
Well, I'm
designed
sure
it.
that's their ultimate goal.
Yeah. See, and like as we're seeing here, this is why power cycling at a certain point, you can't do that because you'll lose your system for too long because we're still waiting for that base to come up, which takes 2-3 minutes. And if you
Right.
have multiple base stations, it adds 2 to 3 minutes because you got to wait for the master to come up, then do your first slave, then do your second. So, I mean,
So
I did
right now you have to manually power cycle them after the fact, or you just go in, turn doing the start of this will turn everything off.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
you go and start your base. Once it's all up, then you start all of the slaves.
one at a time.
So-
I found it goes
no.
faster one at a time.
Yeah. So
And-
what I would recommend is all your devices out in the field. You take everything down, bring up your field devices, and then bring up your master.
Oh, I thought
And then
that wasn't a
as
problem
your master
anymore.
starts coming through, not with the new version 1.8.
And when is 1.8 come out?
It was came out on Monday, so it's available for download on their website now.
Oh, okay,
Just
okay.
client technology. So
Hey,
I
Brian,
actually I have it on the laptop.
Which
And does
file is that?
CrewWare change?
This was I grabbed the wrong file, Cobes. Sorry.
Is CrewWare a new file too?
Yes, it's a new version of CrewWare. Yeah. Now old files, you can if you have a file in 1.4, 1.3, 1.1, it will cross over into 1.8. However, if your physical devices don't all have the same firmware, that's where you could run into an issue. So in this case, yeah. So in this case, this is only what I have here. So I have 2 base stations and a hub and a copper hub here next to me. So this is what's fired up at the moment.
So the version of CrewWare that we got for the last CrewWare event was 1.4.0.2.
Right. The new version
that's
is
the old
1.8.
one. Oh, okay, fine.
The new version is 1.8, which I have.
So I will.
I have it here on the laptop. I can show you. We can go through it a little bit and see if there's any major differences.
Is it released?
Yes. Yep. You can get it right now on their website. Some of the major changes are the groups that we mentioned. There's now user rights capabilities. So you can, the bell packs, you can lock the menus. So the users can't get into the menus. They would need a passcode to get in. There's a roaming sensitivity feature that allows you, depending on when you can, when it transfers between radio transceivers. You now have in the 900 megahertz, you now have the split mode, which is upper band and lower band. So you can split your time slots, be able to get more bell packs in one zone. The relays are connected, and they fixed the power cycle. Those are kind of the major ones.
In 1.8, the new version, the remote antennas and and hubs do not need to be power cycled.
Right. Not in the new
Just the
version.
CU.
Yeah, just the CU. If the hot swapping now works, you don't have
Right,
to power
like we
cycle everything to add.
And like we said, if you overbuilt your system in previous versions than 1.8, there was a possibility that even if you had the antenna in your system or you had the hub in your system, there was a possibility that it may not work, that you would need to do a power cycle.
Yeah,
In the new version, they've corrected that. So now, so long as it's in your drawing
Right.
and you connect it in the proper port, it'll wake up exactly where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, when I was doing the show on Long Island, I found that I could plug antennas in and out and they come back and go back on, even though it wasn't actually guaranteed. It seemed to work.
Right, it worked
Yeah.
about 80% of the time.
Yep.
And then depending on how much you would do, it would slowly degrade the system. Because it would start sending bad information into the system. Because at this last Super Bowl, we were chasing an issue and I kept moving antennas around a little bit. And I was actually making the system worse because I wasn't power cycling the whole thing. I was just temporarily moving something, plugging it in, checking, let me move a little bit somewhere else. And it wasn't until we power cycled the whole system that it actually corrected part of that problem that I had created. But now with the new version, you don't have to worry about that.
And the hardware hasn't changed at all when we go to 1.8. It's all the same hardware, right?
Correct.
Is there are the antennas somewhat weatherproof?
Somewhat.
Even though they have
so,
antennas screwed on, antennas screwed on the top, but
right. And then your here, let me shop.
unshare your screen there for a second.
Yep. So all your connections are down on the bottom. Yeah, like Kevin's showing there. You see the transmit and receive light. So that's how you can indicate that you're part of your CrewNet and it knows who it is that transmit and receive light will come on.
Now the second, the loop out connection does that feeds through the power, right?
Correct. Up to 7 more additional
Right.
units after that. Yep. Your power connector is that little you pop up a little button on the side there.
Right. And are there any special, what's the little tiny USB for?
That's for firmware updates.
Right. Okay.
So if you needed to do a firmware update, you do it right from CrewWare. If I share my screen again.
Can we do a firmware update now?
Yes, we could. So hold on. So if I get rid of this guy, I go offline. Come on. So I'm going to close the 1.4 program. And I have to open the 1.8 because that's where the devices would get their information from.
So the 1.8 program will still see the CU and everything from before? The prior version?
Yes, but it'll prompt you and say you have the wrong version.
Got it.
It'll prompt you and tell you need to do an update. So now it looks very much similar. You come here to your firmware. Okay. So you can do it one of two ways. You can do it over the network or you can do USB devices. So I like to connect the USB to the computer. You can do it with a hub. You connect your little USB port on the side. Okay. Now you can go to your USB devices. Okay. Oh, now my computer is recognizing my device here. And you scan for USB devices. So now it tells you here it's 1402. Okay. So it tells you it needs an update, right? Because you're in 1.8. So you would just hit update.
So that update file is built into the software for programming. Correct. It's not a separate file.
Correct. It's built into CrewWare. Correct. So your CrewWare itself is your firmware. So that's what you in the software itself, it's sending the file over. And it's the same thing for the control units, same thing for the hubs, all the bell packs, all of that gets loaded up exactly the same. So if I had a USB hub here connected to the computer, I could plug in multiple bell packs or multiple devices, and they would all pop up in the screen, and I could just hit update on all of them, and it would go through
Is
all
that-
the devices.
Is that significantly faster than the network connection? Although you wouldn't be able to do your bell packs and antennas via the network, no,
The antennas you can do through the network, I believe.
through
Yeah.
the CrewNet.
Yeah,
for
yeah, I
just
believe.
the belt packs you can.
I think the bell packs and the hubs, I think, are the ones that you have to use the USB.
I've just in best
But-
practices gotten into the to plug them in.
But I
individually.
thought you said when you turn on a bell pack, it checks for firmware, and if it says no, you need to do your firmware, do you still need to plug it in USB to do that update?
Correct.
And you can do that with the system live with the show?
You know, I've never tried a live. I believe you have to be offline to do the firmware though. The system can be running in the background.
Oh yeah, you don't
but
need to
it would
have
be
this
offline
software
from the base
on.
station.
You don't need to have this programming software on for the system to run.
Correct. So it takes a few minutes of belt pack. The CUs take the longest because there's a lot of information that go to the control units. So that's why it's
But I
easier
like-
if you had a USB.
I
hub,
like
you can
I
do
like that
multiple
there's no
levels.
extra, I like that there's no extra file you have to look up to find to load in. It just, if you have the 1.8 software, you put it on, your hardware finds its stuff right there.
Right. Now, if we plugged in, if we had a line drawing and we plugged in our control unit and a hub and an antenna, and we fired them up, and you notice that the control unit, was 1.8 and the antenna was 1.8, but maybe the hub was grayed out. That's where you could do it right over the network from here, and you could do the firmware update, and then it'll appear in the back in the network.
So it's only the
It'll
bell
show
packs
right-
that absolutely have to be plugged in USB.
Correct. But all the devices do have a USB port, so you can do them individually. The
So
antennas,
again, I forgot what you said. Is it faster over USB or?
it's much faster over USB.
Yeah.
The
Brian,
antennas all have it.
I think the hubs need to be USB'd as well, because I have the one I have in my system here needs an update, and I don't see it on the crew. I have to plug it in.
Okay. So it's just best practices that that's what I've gotten to. The OTA at the moment, the updates are not OTA because the file's just too large.
Yeah,
See the question there from Mark. So that's it. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really time it. I wasn't really sure how long that was, but then you can just disconnect it and you're ready to go.
Right. Terrific. That's a huge improvement.
So in the profiles, I think in here is where, so this looks a little different. Okay. Oh, so here's the group that we were mentioning earlier. You can assign a group in here, or group management is a new tab up here. So if you wanted to make,
And that will separate them out
A
in
two
your
group.
display of who is what on the bottom.
correct. So make green A2s for Peter. Yeah, we have a 900 bell pack.
In this 1.8 software, if you add a profile, does it still default to 2400?
Yeah, it just did. I noticed that. So then if we go back to our system diagram. Oh, pop this up. Oh, right now there's no, because I don't have any radio packs on. But in this area here, the radio packs, that's where you would see it broken into the groups. It would break them up so that just for sorting purposes, it would be easier to find your bell packs if you had to change it.
Now, when you did that firmware update, you only did the antenna, right?
I only did one bell pack, yeah. So I have to go through and do the rest.
Right. So the CU hasn't been updated yet.
Correct.
Right.
That's
Okay.
it.
Cool.
And that one's going to take a little while. The CUs take the longest because there's a lot of information that goes into the CUs.
What's in the device toolbox? Is that the one where you can just drag it under the screen?
Yep. So you have the two ways to do it. You can either right click on the screen and add a device from here. You know, if you want to add a transceiver or a hub.
At least there it's asking what frequency transceiver you want to put on.
Correct. Or you have your personal toolbox up here, which you can then drag and drop specific items into. Like, you know, I don't have a 2.4 in there, but if I wanted it to be in there, I could put a 2.4 in there.
Right.
And then you can just drop stuff off. Yep. Drag it.
The belt pack cannot be updated OTA, right? Has to be
Correct.
USB, right?
Has to be USB. Yeah, the file's too big at the moment.
And I think you may answer this question. The question, can you flash more than one device using a USB hub? And you said yes.
Yes. Yeah, you can.
So you could plug in, you know, all your belt packs, all your antennas, all your CUs, everything, get the whole screen full of updates and go out to lunch.
Yep. You can do that.
So now all we need is a USB hub with 40 ports on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that pretty much covers it all. I think that one of my favorite parts about CrewCom is it's modular. You can start out with let's say you were a company that just had a bunch of BTRs, or maybe you're a theater company that has some BTRs. You could buy a 2-channel control unit, 1 antenna, and 4 2-channel bell packs, and the price is very close to the price of what a BTR used to cost. So it's pretty inexpensive as it goes. And then you could take that unit and buy a 4-channel control unit, and buy hubs, and buy antennas, and buy more bell packs, and go on until the maximum size. What is the maximum size of a system?
In 900, I believe it's 4 bases, 36 belt packs, in theory, 14 antennas.
Right.
Right.
And it's 16 transceivers in 2.4.
And you can have
additional belt packs.
And you can have
more spectrum.
And you can have 2.4 equipment and 900 equipment all in the same system.
Yes.
Correct. So one CU can do both 2.4 and 900. Just for the sheer fact that there's no radio information there's no radio at all in the CUs. It's only from the belt pack to the transceiver, and then it gets turned into data through the CrewNet. So all the CU knows is that there is a 2.4 belt pack, or there is a 2.4 antenna, and then all the information just gets controlled through your normal CrewWare.
So you could do a bunch of 2.4s and a bunch of 900s in your theater with separate antennas for each, but all plugged into the same hub, into one CU, maximum of 18 bell packs. And then you add more bell packs, you add another CU, just plug it in and keep going.
Yep.
Yeah, it's scalable, which is really nice, because it can be as simple, like you said, as a BTR, where you just have one control unit, you have one antenna, and you have a couple bell packs in one zone. Or you can totally scale it out, like Kevin did at the Super Bowl or at the Combine, where we've got locker rooms, we've got the field, we've got green rooms, like you said. You have all these multiple locations that with the fiber hubs now you have access to all this that you didn't have in the past. There's one device we're waiting for that I know that the guys have in the works, and we keep bugging them for it, and that's an audio hub. So they have the copper hub and the fiber hub. So what they're looking to do is add in an audio hub, which should be 8 channels of 4-wire. In addition, so if you only had 10, 12 bell packs, but you needed 12 channels of 4-wire because everybody needed different things, you now have that access without adding in an additional CU.
So it'd be less expensive than a CU, and maybe half rack or something.
Yeah,
correct.
Or a whole rack. I don't know. 8 probably one whole rack unit, right?
Yeah, we're like
Probably a
situation
whole rack unit. Yeah.
at the Super Bowl this year. I had 4 base stations because we needed 16 channels of 4-wire, but we only were allowed to use 18 belt packs. So in theory,
Yeah.
if we had this hub, I could have, only done it with two CUs and saved us that CU space.
Why only 18?
Because the frequency allocation, because Fox was using a CrewCom system as well. So we were splitting it, that they were taking some of the time slots, we were getting the time slots for frequency hopping purposes. So we were limited into the number of belt packs we were allowed to use.
And 36 is the maximum?
Yes. And that also in the case of the Super Bowl, we were also limited. We were allowed 10 antennas. They were allowed 4 because they were covering a very small area.
And did those systems have to be synced?
Right. So
Yes.
there is a sync port also on the base stations. It's either a copper or a fiber connection. It can be you can take any device on the network. So an antenna, you can take a loop out of an antenna. You can take a hub. You can take the output of the CU and connect all those devices together via the sync. So those two systems can coexist, and they know where their time slots and their hopping are, so they don't interfere with each other.
So that would have to be the output of one system's antenna feed the sync in of the other system would sync them.
Yes.
Right. To directly to the CU of the system. So,
Right.
Now in this scenario where, our control units are each individually in the compounds,
Right.
you'd have to essentially get a device over fiber between the two compounds. So you could drop a hub over there, something like that. But any of the devices take sync and push it out into the network. So any one of them
Right.
can get it. Also, when
Now
you're running those two systems side by side, if you happen to have like two antennas side by side, you have to
Right.
make sure that your hopping pattern number 1 isn't next to their hopping pattern number 1, because that can cause interference.
How do you adjust the hopping pattern?
In the profile management, in the device management, in the transceivers. Well, let me.
Are you
open
talking
up-
about doing split 900? Is that the hopping you're talking about?
No, there actually is you have a manual selection on the hopping pattern
Right.
in the software. Hold on, I'm
So
gonna pull
when
it
you
up.
when you split the 900, is that just a matter of clicking up or lower?
There's a split mode in there for that.
And is that the same true for 2400?
I don't know about this. I don't think 2.4 did split band, because 2.4 has almost double the bandwidth space.
But if you wanted to stay out of part of the 2.4 band, you'd want to have some way to do that.
Right.
Like if you were doing a show with a IBM and they were doing all their Wi-Fi in channel 2 and channel the lower half of 2.4, they might say, well, you can't use that.
Right. So now if you see here, I opened one of the radio transceivers.
Right.
You'll see here the hopping pattern here. It says number 3. You can change that. Now, you can't do that live. You have to do that, in your initial design.
So each hopping pattern is compatible with working with another. So one can be 3, one can be 4.
Correct. Now, when you go into your list view, as you add antennas, you'll see that it automatically assigns you a hopping pattern here. So you could change it here too, if you wanted to.
So every antenna has a different hopping pattern?
Correct.
Yeah,
And
they
that's
have
why
14
you were
total different patterns.
Okay, that's why you were limited on the number of antennas, because they took half of them, you took the other half and set them all to different patterns.
Right. So
Correct.
I had hopping patterns 1 through 10, and they had hopping patterns 11 through 14.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right. And one of the other options you have here in the antenna, you had mentioned earlier how the antennas were dual antenna. The antennas actually could be split into transmit receive, or you only have to use the left antenna or only have to use the right antenna.
So when you
That's
click on
completely
left or
selected.
right, when you click on left or right, the other antenna is dead?
Correct. It
But
is
in
only
the
one. It
dual
only uses one
antenna-
port.
But in the
It's
dual antenna,
dual.
it's sending the same information out, alternate packet.
Right.
Mhm. They're
Unless
both the same.
unless you go to transmit receive, where it
Then it
does individually
becomes-
split into transmit and receive.
And then I believe the left one becomes a transmit, the right becomes a receive. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's the case.
Which
So
would
it's
be
deep-
advantageous if you wanted to run the receive into a combiner.
Mhm.
So its default is dual, but that is selectable there if you wanted to change that.
And also there in that screen, if you go just to the right, you can adjust the power output of the antenna as well.
Right.
Right. And here's your radio band. You would change your band here. Right now,
Right.
we're full band. You can do high band, low band. And the antenna, the bell packs will roam between them. And then your transmit power, you have up to 24 dBm.
Can you put a 24 antenna in that program and see if we can adjust the band in it?
Yeah. So if I come here and I adjust it to.
So if we only wanted to use one antenna, we would just be limited to 6 bell packs, right?
Correct.
Correct. And I just received a text message that says that from Gary from Client was saying that it's actually 72 belt packs is the limit, whether it's 72 900 megahertz, 72 2.4, or 72 if you're doing a mix. I don't know how accurate that is. I was just sent that text message.
So that's it just goes to show how versatile the system is. You know, you have a lot of options here. And it's scalable, you know, which is really the nice thing that we like.
I mean,
you know,
it's a
2.4, you know, used to be not a viable option. You know, but a lot of stadiums are moving over to 5.8. A lot of arenas are moving to 5.8 and vacating the 2.4 spectrum. So in certain areas, 2.4 has become a much more viable option.
If you have 2 systems running, they have to be synced. You can't run 2 systems without syncing.
In
right?
theory, you can do it without syncing them, but you'll probably end up with problems because every now and then somebody's going to hop on the same pattern, and it'll jam, and then they'll hop.
At the very least, they have to be set to different hopping patterns.
If the antennas are close,
they may still interfere at some point, but they won't be interfere in sync.
In theory, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
But it's in an ideal world, yes. No matter what, whether you're different hopping patterns or not, you still would sync your systems. Again, at the Super Bowl, we synced our system with Fox, even though we were all in different hopping patterns, just so our hopping patterns were functioning together.
I'm getting a note from Jason Glass about interference from narrow bandwidth devices like ULXD mics. I don't quite understand it because does ULXD work in 900 and 2.4?
The ULXD that I'm aware, you know, there's maybe some other, you know, off stuff that CP's done, but I'm not sure where it slots in.
A lot of the microphones too work in 940 to 960.
Yeah, yes, exactly. The 900 meg mics, exactly. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, so the sure, not the ULXDs, but the Axiom Digitals are available in you know, 940 to 960. But
and how does CrewCom react to that?
Well, CrewCom is 902, 928. So they're
it's a different band.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll also get some information there, Jason. That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of wraps it up for me, guys. I don't know if anybody has any additional questions.
Good. No, that's pretty much it. I've got Jason says there's a 902, 928 and ULXD has a 902, 928 also.
Correct.
Really?
It does.
Again, getting a message from Gary at Pliant saying they've tested the 900 mic, Shure mics, and they don't bother us, but if they're close, they will see them every now and then. They have problems like at 918, if I'm reading his message correctly. so that they could potentially cause a little problem if you're nearby.
Well, I think the rule of thumb is true of any of these antennas. Don't put your antennas near somebody else's antenna, and don't put your antennas near a Wi-Fi antenna. And
Actually,
even if even a 900 antenna, if placed next to a Wi-Fi access point, will have problems.
so
Yeah, and
correction.
RFID is a good point too, you know.
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that.
we had a big problem with that at the Super Bowl. Fox eventually dumped using their CrewCom on the field because of the Wi-Fi, the RFID system that they had to track people coming off the field. You had to scan your credential to get on, but to leave, they had this big four big antennas in every on, so it would read you when you left, so they knew who was on and off the field. We had a big problem with that when their system was turned off, which they temporarily did for us as a test. We had amazing coverage everywhere. As they slowly brought it up and brought the power back to where they needed it, our range got very limited to just our set on the field. Hallways were great, outside the stadium was great, but we were getting interference from them.
This is before you could split band on the 900.
Yes.
So that might have helped. They might have been able to use only half the band.
Right. I don't know what their what the frequency range they were at. I just know we were in a similar range. And we did notice that we had range issues with them. And it's weird because it would come and go. And I'm not sure if it's because we were hopping or whatever, but I could stand in my spot where I spent most of the show and I'd be fine 95% of the time. But then every now and then I'd get real squirrely and couldn't talk, couldn't hear, and then it would come back. So it's kind of random. But where I might be.
John Krisky is asking about the UHFR X1 band, but I think that's the band we were just talking about.
Well, the X1 is, no, that's slightly higher. But it's that same principle. Yeah, it's all in a lot of that same area, but
right.
Here. Don't remember all those because but yeah, I think this is a topic we want to add on, Pete, to the software discussion.
Yeah.
Just, you know, I mean, because we all got to live in there. And, you know, you're going to have to make decisions and choices. Do I use some of this, more of that? You know, generally, you know, Jason obviously has, you know, when you're looking at a large number of mics, my experience in the 900 mics, and I'm sure it's maybe similar with Jason, we're not looking at a large count of mics either. You know, is typical, you know, it's not like we're trying to shove 40 channels of 900 meg mics in there, right? And that wouldn't work well at all. Much less anything else. So I think this is one of the challenges we have though with all this co-mingling, co-sharing, right, of spectrum, and we just keep working it out together. We discover it and we make changes and we go forward, right?
Does that mean we can go out and do only 900 meg social distancing now instead of 143K?
See, that's a good point. If we just go up in frequency, right?
Exactly.
We can be closer.
Exactly.
Okay. And you're always looking for loopholes, Pete. I'm telling
exactly. Of course.
So.
Actually, I only work in 2.4 gig social distancing.
Oh, you know, and there's the rabbit hole, guys. We found it. That usually means we're at the end of our time together, because when we find those rabbit holes, it's time to put a what is it they call that? We're there.
A button.
So there you go. We're going to close this one out. I would like to continue the 900 meg discussion when we have the Pliant folks on, just to get some feedback from them on the experiences they've had in the world, because between RFID and other RF technology that's operating in there, whether that's mics or other devices, you know, what's going to be those best practices to make that all work? So, Mac, Pete, Brian, Kevin, thanks so much. That was really awesome. And there were some really great questions. We were able to jump right into the meat of putting these things in the field and using them. So I love to see that. So if you got any more questions,
thanks for having us.
Yeah,
hey,
thanks a lot,
Brian.
guys.
Yeah, and thanks to the CP team again for providing us some folks here and this great backgrounder. So you see the emails up there. don't hesitate to reach out to these folks and chat about it. And we'll look forward to our next discussion. Keep an eye on our website, Practical Short
I have
Tech.
noticed that we have several extremely loyal watchers, John Christie and Ryan being among them. And just so they make sure they know, we have a frequent watcher program. If you watch 10, you get to watch the 11th one free.
All right, so don't forget that. So don't send us a
Exactly.
note, go, hey, can I get my voucher? It's already in the mail.
No,
All
you
right?
have to come, your ticket has to be punched in person, so it doesn't count
That's
if
right.
you don't come to us
2.4
and punch it.
spacing. We might even apply 5 gig
Exactly.
spacing. So,
Exactly.
all right, guys. So long. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. See ya.
Bye-bye.